Good afternoon. You're listening to Gambling with an Edge. Now here are your hosts, Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is gaming attorney Bob Nersesian. Bob Nersesian, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Always a pleasure, guys. You're a lot of fun.
As are you. You're one of our most popular guests, and people always want to know when you're going to be back on. First question. What are your rights in international federal waters as a card counter? If it matters, I'm talking about the boats that go offshore for a day trip and come back. If you're backed off, can they detain you in a back room or basement or handcuff you for the rest of the 6-hour cruise?
No. Not if you're not doing anything illegal. I think they have powers of arrest on international waters, but you can't be arrested for doing something that's not illegal, so that's false imprisonment. Now, what you do about it is a different story a little bit. Specifically, there are some nautical conventions or what have you that you might be able to tap into, but so far as we're dealing with the United States, your rights are pretty well defined by I'd like to say your state of departure, but it might be the state in which you seek a remedy. And the way that works is it appears that the common law would govern once you find a venue within the United States where you can get minimum contacts sufficient to get personal jurisdiction over the cruise line or the gambling, the purveyors, okay? So generally, you're going to sue in the state where your departure was. It would be false imprisonment. If you are dealing with a gambling debt, it gets a little different, and it would be very complex because in a lot of states, including Nevada, by the way, when it comes to suing on a gambling debt, the statute of Anne still appertains, and what that means is that neither party can sue on a gambling debt or sue on a gambling contract. So if they just take your money or something like that, you're at risk of being put out of court. But I'm not going to say that's going to happen. Obviously, the world has changed a lot since the 1530s. I don't know when the statute of Anne was, but you're just going to treat it as whatever your rights were under your state of departure, and then adding insult to injury here, read your ticket, okay? Depending on your excursion line, let's say you take off from the shore in Delaware and you're 30 miles off and you're there enjoying the slot machines and you have a ticket that says you agree that any dispute arising between you and the cruise line will be resolved possibly in arbitration. Now that's an adhesion contract and you never actually accepted it, so you get to play around with that a little bit, but you may find yourself having to arbitrate, or more common, there's a forum selection clause that might say something like all actions against Carnival Cruise Line will be brought in the state of Florida, and everybody agrees to jurisdiction therein. And now you sue in Delaware, and they're bringing up the ticket and saying, you can't sue here, dismiss the case, judge. Do I have an answer to that question? The answer is, very truthfully, courts have gone both ways on it.
I know you get excited, Bob, but please try not to pound your desk while you're talking.
I did that again?
3 times.
Well, yeah, you're lucky you're not here.
Now, you mentioned gambling debts. Several months ago, we had a guest on this show named Wilma Zero, who had $20,000 or so of Bellagio chips that they wouldn't cash. He told us that you have had the case. You're trying to get his money and so far have been unsuccessful. Can you tell us anything about that?
Well, what a mess. Okay. I don't know what he told you or what have you, or even his depth of understanding of what I'm trying to do or how I'm trying to do it.
Before we even get to that, he said at the time he called gaming and a gaming agent told him they don't have to cash your chips, which I thought that was just flat out wrong. Am I wrong about that?
Well, this is what we're working through, okay? And that's exactly where I was going to go, Richard. It's my understanding that the gaming agent we're talking about, you guys mind if I use names?
No.
That would be good.
Yeah. Was an agent brunette. And from the information given to me, the information that I relayed back to them, gaming, from the information given to me, she specifically said, that's a civil dispute. We don't have jurisdiction over it. Which is most curious because if you look at that case we've discussed before on here, Young versus Gaming Control Board, it's exactly the same case. And the Gaming Control Board fought like the dickens to prevent us from winning that case for the gambler. They failed, okay? And I don't know why the Gaming Control Board would take any kind of position. They're the judges, for goodness sakes, on an issue dealing with whether or not a gaming debt is legitimate from a civil perspective. I mean, you go into court and you fight about a car accident and the judge throws out your case and you appeal. That judge doesn't then show up on your appeal and say, I was right. But that's what the gaming board was trying to do. And the Supreme Court very soundly in Young said, no, you're not right. They didn't say, but I really wish they would have, why are you here? Because they don't belong there. But they interloped, got themselves in front of the court, and got handed their hat. That case was very much the same case as the one we're talking about. And it appeared, because this wasn't the only one where this happened, that after we won, or after Mr. Young won the Young versus Gaming Control Board case, the Gaming Control Board, at least through some of its agents, decided to take a perspective of, well, this looks like the player might have the upper hand on the casino, so you know what? We're going to wash our hands of it. Because at least two different people reported to me that the gaming board was now saying, this is not within the gaming board's jurisdiction. It is a civil dispute, which can only tell me, considering their earlier interest in it, that, oh, they don't like losing, and once they do lose, they're going to get out of the business. So I called them on that, and what I got was a lawyer with the Attorney General's office who said, well, that doesn't sound right, and he looked at it. And he's now concluded, at least at this stage from our conversations, that that isn't right, and it is within the Gaming Control Board's jurisdiction. So instead of actually deciding the issue, because understand this, when the gambler called the Gaming Control Board, their duty is to investigate, and they have 30 days to issue a decision on that investigation through an agent. They failed to follow their statutory duty entirely. They just plain blew it off. Okay? So now we're back in front of them and talking to their lawyers through the Attorney General's office. And what the Attorney General says is, okay, we're going to start a patron dispute. My response was, $3 short and 2 weeks too late. You were supposed to do this 2 months ago. It's supposed to be over. Well, now I'm in a patron dispute with the casino over this. And of all things, from what I can read, because they haven't given me their full information yet, They believe it's illegal to gamble under an alias or to refuse to provide your ID. Well, we know that both of those have been decided too. So now we've got the Gaming Control Board trying to step out of their statutory duties, but they were held to bring them back in, but now they didn't do it the way they were statutorily required to. So they're restarting the whole process. I don't know where they find that authority in any statute, but now we've restarted the whole process, and the casino is so intent on keeping this money that they've now refused a second time, even though we provided them with the information from Young, which essentially says, we gave you the information, pay it. They did not say that my client did not win the money. They did not say that my client cheated. Well, maybe they did, but they didn't address the issue for which they originally held the money, which was, we can't verify your play.
Now, how can you bar somebody? How can you claim that, you played and you're too good a player, so we're barring you, but we can't verify that you played, so we don't have to pay you? I mean, it just seems absurd.
How much as we're dealing with gambling and as we're going through this for the 35th time on your show, how often when you're dealing with casinos and the Gaming Control Board is reason or logic the basis of the decision? You know what the basis of the decisions are? We have the juice. We have your money. That's the way it ends. That's their logic and reason. But it's not supposed to work that way. So that's where we are.
All right. Moving on. Next question. Is there any way that owning shares of a publicly traded casino like Penn National or MGM could prevent them from kicking one out? As a partial owner, would I get any additional rights?
No.
That
was easy.
All right. Next question.
You might have a right to attend the shareholders meeting and make your 2 cents worth of a speech on any given year. But as to in states where you can be barred from the casino, i.e. trespassed, I don't think you pick up anything via that status.
Oh, wait, you know what? Before we move on, I just want to jump back to that Wilma Zero case. Is there a case to sue gaming over this for how badly they've screwed up?
No.
Oh, wow.
Let me tell you something. I mean, you know that I don't countenance this government high-handedness, but there are statutes out there that even go so far as to say everything gaming does is confidential. They don't have to disclose it to anybody, including, for God's sakes, the Assembly or the Senate of the state of Nevada. All right. And on top of that, they have their governmental immunity. And then on top of that, so 3 levels deep now, they are not subject to the common control any other administrative body has in the state of Nevada. Specifically, there is a statute that says that you cannot bring a writ against the Gaming Control Board or the Gaming Commission. A writ is the method through which you force the government agency to do that which is required under the legal scheme, meaning the statutes. So if the Gaming Control Board is failing to follow the Constitution or failing to follow the statutes, technically you can't go into the courts per this other statute and force them to comply. I will tell you this, okay? I don't think it works. I have had them in front of the court on a writ. Now, a writ is not suing them. A writ can only compel them to do their statutory or constitutional duty. And even though the statutes say that the Gaming Control Board is not subject to writs, I've been in there with writs, and when they say, because they do, we're not subject to this court's jurisdiction, there's a statute that says he can't bring this writ, I go, isn't that nice? Here's the constitutional provision in the Nevada Constitution, which specifically references the survival of all writs. You tell me, Mr. Gaming, how is it that you are an administrative agency and somehow the fact that I have all writs available to me under the Nevada Constitution, you're somehow exempt? I think not. I've had courts agree with me on that, at which point the Gaming Control Board, at least from my experience at this point, tends to say, oh, gee, maybe that statute does say what it says, and then follow it. Okay. And the other way you get them in front of the courts, like in the Young cases, through an interminable process of appeals.
Doesn't sound like fun.
No, and one of the other things they've done, and I'll just tell you, I mean, look, these things do not put food on my table. I'm just doing them because somebody has to. All right. You look at the Young matter and read the decision, and you'll recognize that I went through essentially a trial, an appeal, a second appeal, and a third appeal before we, not a trial. I went through an investigation, a trial, an appeal, and a second appeal, 4 levels of the process before we achieve success. And the curious thing there is not one of those processes would have profited me. Each one would have cost me over 10 grand. Okay. There was only 32,000 available in the case, and the client got some. So I'm upside down like crazy on that, but the rule has now been changed, and that was my goal. Which is why I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Well, we appreciate you taking one for the team, as it were. It's
well, you have another question coming up later, where I tried to take one for the team, and I ended up probably, in retrospect, hurting the team. But I think it's a crazy decision. It's a decision nonetheless, and that's the what was that called? Sorry, I know we're on air and you hate dead time. The case on trespassing and the right to Slade. The Slade case where, somebody asked you guys about 463.0129 and whether or not that statute contains within it the right of public accommodation vis-a-vis casinos, and they shouldn't be able to throw you out. Absolutely correct when reading that statute. In fact, 2 of 4 judges with the Nevada Supreme Court seemed to agree with me, but because it ended up eventually, after all the hearings, being a 2-2 decision, the district court was upheld. But that NRS 463.0129 specifically says that it's to protect competition, and in context, that's the gambler versus the casino, not competition amongst casinos. And it also says that the common law, as it existed, is the law relative to casinos, and historically they had the duty to allow people in as a public amusement. But they reversed both of those. And the only reason I can possibly come up with, because they literally, in the decision, the final decision, they literally misquote Well, they don't misquote the statute. They quote the statute correctly, but put the wrong thing in front of it. Instead of saying yes and then the quote, they said no and then the quote. And in context, it was clearly a yes and then the quote. So the Supreme Court, in that case, lined up with the casinos, and it looked like they did so solely to protect their ability to be able to persecute advantaged gamblers.
Okay.
That was on page 5, Bob.
No, I have the question, and that doesn't seem like we should ask you anymore because you've already answered it. So let's go.
Sorry. Okay.
I'll forgive you and get over it. All right. Next question. Is there any precedent on the legality of having beards for online sports or casino wagering? If someone uses their own account to bet on my behalf, that seems legitimate, just like a Vegas runner. But what if they just hand the account over to me or allow me to open accounts on their behalf?
I've got no answer to that question. It hasn't been addressed. I know that they would hate it. I think that, frankly, from my perspective and knowing the way the law works in this state, if you're dealing with a Vegas sports book and you try to use a beard in that manner, you're going to run into some huge problems. I don't think it'll reach criminal, but maybe your account will get frozen or something like that when and if they discover it.
In my limited experience, what happens is they once you start winning on an account, they lower your limits so low that it's not worth using the account anymore. So, suddenly the most you can bet is $5 on a game or something like that.
But the thing is, the question is, so you get burned on that. And as I understand, the question is, so now you call up your second cousin and say, I need you to open an account here at Paris.
No, that's what I'm talking about. So I have a beard account and, it starts winning and then they lower it down. And many people just have endless numbers of beards that they churn through.
Well, I was going to say that's the next thing you can do. And this is, I'm not suggesting you do it. I can't tell you that it is without its moral or possibly even legal implications. But it's one of those situations where if you do have the unlimited beards, how the heck are they ever going to know?
Right.
Until the IRS does that little audit.
Next question. Can a casino refuse to pay chips earned during regular play because I was previously barred? I gave my ID when I was barred.
We just talked about this for about 20 minutes, right? With the Wilma Zero case.
Well, no, that's a little...
Well, he was not previously barred.
Yeah. And he wasn't, so that wasn't the question. My answer is, and this is strictly my answer. First of all, it's going to depend on your jurisdiction. But is the contract itself, the gaming contract, impacted by the fact that it couldn't have existed but for your violation? And before we get there, let's understand one other thing too. Trespassing or being previously trespassed is actually a very sketchy area, and usually you have some very solid arguments to say that you weren't trespassed, so that even if they make the argument, you can make the argument that it can't apply to me. For example, and we've heard this from me before, the trespass warning must come from the owner or the occupant of the building you're being trespassed from. MGM, for example, does not own or occupy Mandalay Bay. Some judges, because it's been in front of a number of them, have said, oh, yes, they do, even though there's case law out there that says that a subsidiary is a standalone business and you never... There's actually case law that says that the business of the subsidiary is not owned by the parent. You can't get clearer than that. And it's pretty hard to make a security officer at a holding company be an agent for a subsidiary, because that would be what is called piercing the corporate veil as well. So generally, if you get a company-wide ban from a sister company or something like that, or from a parent on a letter, that should not, and I believe it does not personally, apply to all those other casinos, because that warning did not come from the owner or the occupant of the other casinos. To give a better explanation, if you're at Mandalay Bay and you get a trespass warning, Mandalay Bay is Mandalay Corp, and you get a trespass warning that includes MGM, the casino, on the trespass, I don't believe that that's in any way valid, because Mandalay Corp and its security officers are in no way, shape, or form agents of MGM or owners of representatives of the owner of the MGM brand. So first look at the idea that if you're dealing with the question you pose, you are likely going to have some defenses to the idea of having been trespassed, so that their argument gets undercut before they can even reach the question. Then going back to the idea of whether or not the contract is affected by the fact that they have a prior deal with you, that you're not allowed to be in there. I don't know how that is a material term or undercuts a material term of the contract entered into on the wager. And I would suggest that those wagers also under regulations must be, quote, promptly paid. I don't see anything that creates an exception that says promptly paid unless we really hate your guts and told you can't be here. You won, okay? Or you lost, but not everything.
Right, but so what that means is that legally they can't do it, but in the real world they might do it, and then you would have to fight it, and eventually you will probably win, but
you're going to spend more than you're trying to get.
Right. And if it's an Indian casino, all bets are off, and good luck to you.
Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be some Indian casino questions here, and all of them are governed by the chapter title in my book, OMG WTF.
Yeah.
With how many exclamation points on there?
So
next question. Do I have a right to demand a check instead of cash, or is it up to the casino?
No. Do you have a right to ask for one? Sure. Will that probably be granted? It's my understanding from reviewing this in the experience of my clients that if you request a check, you can get a check. And the actual regulation that addresses this says the casino must promptly pay by cash or check. So they follow the law if they do either. And since they're in control, they can make whatever rule they want to on those two, between those two. But I don't see anything that gives a patron any right to dictate what the casino has to do to meet the regulations. Does that make sense?
It does. For me personally, 20-some years ago, when I started with a lot of coins into a video poker machine and ended up with a big win, some of them did not want to pay me. They would pay individual jackpots by check. But if at the end I had a lot of tickets, they would not want to pay those by check, claiming they couldn't know how much I started with, and hence they didn't want me laundering any money. Now, I was a regular customer there, and so it was never, and I didn't make a big deal about it. But that's the way it was at the MGM Grand in Vegas. They would not do it for tickets, but they would do it for jackpots.
Okay. Well, the actual gaming regulations say it's their choice. Either way is acceptable.
All right.
Okay.
First tribal casino question today. Recently, a tribal casino banned me and claimed I had been backed off at another one of their properties for refusing to show ID. They never read the formal trespass to me, but threatened that if I ever come back, my chips are no good and I would be arrested. I have never shown ID at this property, and they don't know my name. If I do come back, and am I actually breaking the law for trespassing? If not, and I am detained, what are my rights?
Your rights are to bail out once you're in jail. Okay. I've said this time and again, and I can't understand why this is so difficult. Okay. I mean, we keep getting the same question over and over. Here's the law. If an owner or an occupant of the casino tells you verbally over a megaphone within your hearing, by example, Bob Dancer, get out of our casino right now and never come back. Okay? Guess what? You're trespassed. You've been given a valid trespass warning. There is no such thing as an official trespass. There is just nothing that trespassing is giving a warning that you have to get the hell out of my casino.
And if that warning came over a telephone or an email, that's perfectly valid.
Yeah, if they got everything right, yes. If it's you and they're telling you you can't come back and you receive that message, yes. Why is this? I mean, I don't know. Is this escaping Richard or you, Bob?
No, it's just some people think they have to read the official act or they have to sign something or yeah, you're right. They don't. It's a simple thing. When they tell you you're trespassed, you're trespassed.
Okay. Good. Now, hold on. I do have a little bit to add to that. I'm going to give our listeners an idea of where it came from. There was one justice court case, I believe it was in the early 70s, somewhere in my office. I have a copy of it, where a justice court judge, which is it's a justice of the peace, okay, wrote a one-page opinion that found somebody not guilty because they did not read the statute to them. Okay? That's one, not precedent that anybody has to follow. Okay? And two, I would suggest it's a misstatement of the statute. So, but off of that, everybody has now gone this next step that you have to give the official trespass warning. You run around, you got casinos holding up white cards. You know what those are? Yeah, that's so they hold up a card so that is the signal by their own policy in their own handbook that if the white card is in the air, the person holding up the white card or the person next to them are literally reading the statute to the subject. And the police have taken on also another extra level where unless you can show them a trespass record with a photo, the more informal trespass we were just talking about, they won't make an arrest on that. So there has been some institutionalization of this formal trespass, but there's no decisions that say it's required, and I would suggest that the statute says it's not.
All right. Next question. If a casino pays you in air, and let's say for the sake of argument that they can successfully argue that you knew it was a mispay, and then they come back and ask for the money back, are you legally obligated to give it to them?
Okay. You said error, not air, right?
ERROR.
Okay. Because I went to a museum the other day called the Air and Space Museum, and there was nothing to see. Anyway, isn't that funny? Yeah, you have to give it back. There is a statute in Nevada. Not all states have it, but most states have it. It's mostly to deal with the money that pops out of the ATMs. Actually, you may not even have, if you actually know it happened, you may not even have to be asked for it back. You have a duty to give it back. And again, this is extrapolating off of the ATM statutes that were passed so that banks don't get hit for hundreds of thousands of dollars when all of a sudden they start paying out ATM money by putting in false key numbers or what have you. So those statutes exist. It's a crime to keep the money if you know it doesn't belong to you. So if they ask for it back, the only way you can protect yourself really is to give it back.
Can you ask?
You hate that answer, eh, Bob?
Can you ask for them to show you the tape?
You can.
Let's say you're in this situation where you're at a table game and you don't know that you've been mispaid, and they come up and claim, "We mispaid you. You owe us $500." Do I have to give them $500 with no proof?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
The statutes I'm talking about and everything go right to intent. The situation you've just described, Richard, and I've tried to analyze this as closely as I can. I may be wrong. Lawyers make mistakes. But as I see that circumstance, the casino, it's really weird. The casino will invariably say, when you ask to see the tape, if the tape is ambiguous, they'll say, no, it happened, pay us. If the tape is clear as day, they'll go, come look at the tape. We'll show you where you got it. The answer to the question is, why should the casino get a free shot and you don't? So the answer is, you want to see the tape and you don't know? No, see ya. And go for, if you don't know, head for the door. Okay? Like you would whenever there's heat. Now, are you going to make it to the door? I don't know. And later on, when that video does pop up and it shows that they did mispay you, whether or not they owe you that money, curiously under the statutes I'm talking about, still comes down to whether or not you knew. Okay? So it's very easy to get, you're sitting at a 21 table and you've got an 18 and the dealer has just flipped that fourth card to his 18, or fifth card even, and to his 18, and he pays you because he thought he had a 17, okay, because he counted wrong. You're the one who's responsible for following those 5 cards and adding them up to 18 for the push. I don't know. If you did and you are intentionally keeping that money, then you're guilty. If you didn't know or you had reasonable questions as to whether or not he counted wrong or you counted wrong, there's every argument that that's your money.
Now, most APs on this 18 versus 18 being paid would keep the money, and if the casino asked for it back, yes. But if the casino didn't ask for it back, it just goes into the pile and the game goes on. That would be the MO for most APs, I expect.
Are you telling that to me or to the audience? Because
is there a question in there?
Pardon?
I said, is there a question in there?
Yeah, is there a question? Because if your question is, do I agree with what the APs are doing? Far be it from me to challenge your business model.
Okay, good. That's good enough. That was my question, I guess. Okay. Money on the... Okay, let's say cocktail waitresses can cash chips without having played any gambling game. If I have a hard to cash chips, could I just toke it to a waitress and would they be able to cash it out then? Whether I could subsequently chop that toke with her is a separate pragmatic issue.
The question, when you say hard to cash chip, I got to ask, why is it hard to cash?
Yeah,
if it's
to
hard
me
to
that
cash if it's hard to cash because it was one of the chips that was grabbed up off the floor at Circus after a fight caused an entire blackjack table to flip over, that's pretty problematic. If it's a hard to cash chip because it's a purple or something like that, and they won't give it to you without ID, and you got it from a friend as a tip on something else, that's a totally different story. Is it if it's an illegal chip, or by illegal I mean tainted chip, if it's stolen, I would not suggest doing that. Or can you do that? The answer would be no, because you're passing stolen property. A chip is a chattel, okay? It's not cash. It's very clear in the regulations that that's the case. So if this chip is stolen, it always stays stolen. Just as an example. Don't you wish these questions had easy, straight-up answers?
Well, if they did, there'd be no reason to have you on, because it would all be common sense. But since we enjoy having you on, it's good that they're tough. And since now that I'm finished blowing smoke, I will have some commercials to do.
All right. I'll listen.
The South Point has more than 10,000 games returning at least 99%. This is more such games than anyone else has. I do not know the April casino promotions at the time we're taping this, so today I'm going to talk about other things. Monday is prime time for players 50 years and older. All restaurants charge 50% if you pay with your points, including Michael's, one of the top-rated steakhouses in town. Movies are $4 for seniors. Bingo is 50% on this day. While I haven't explored it personally, bingos for seniors on Monday must be a plus EV play. In the poker room, play 100 hours between March 1st and the end of April and receive $200 cash plus entry into a free roll tournament June 6th through 9th.
Hey guys, this is Colin from BlackjackApprenticeship.com, and if you're serious about card counting, I'd encourage you to check out the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. It has the training tools you'll need to beat the game, like our comprehensive video course and our training suite, so you can learn each skill and virtually test yourself before ever stepping foot in a casino. It also includes the tools you'll need to succeed, like our pro betting software, casino database, results tracking software, and access to a community of like-minded Advantage players to network with in our members forum and chat room software. You can find out more at blackjackapprenticeship.com.
Videopoker.com is the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, this allows you to get correction on most of the games. The game of the week is Peek and Play Poker. This is a 7-coin per line game where you get to see the first card off the pack of 47 before you discard your original. You must take this card, assuming you don't hold all 5 original ones. Let's say you're dealt ace, king, queen, jack of spades, and a red 4. In normal video poker, you hold all of the spades, say a prayer, and hope for royal. Also assume that the peak card's another ace. Goodbye royal flush possibility. Here you just hold the ace because you know another ace is coming, and the new ace will be paired up by the first ace off the deck. Hope for the best. You'll have to work out the strategy on your own. All right, let's go back to Bob Nersesian. Lots more questions for him. Can using a disguise for the sole purpose of being unrecognizable and being able to sit and play be considered cheating or using a device?
This is again a personal opinion, because as you've discussed it has not been tested. I would suggest that a case called the Chen case, which says it's not fraud to use an alias, would also apply to the circumstance you just gave, where it couldn't be fraud to hide your identity through a disguise either. but there are some practical considerations. First of all, definitely from a case that exists, if you use a disguise and when approached, literally flee the casino, that creates enough for a reasonable suspicion to detain for criminal activity. That's a case called Mandarino. Now, there is some dispute as to whether or not a casino itself can detain for suspicion of criminal activity, but at least in that circumstance, the Nevada Supreme Court said they could. What is missing in your example, Bob, is the concept that that also had fleeing. Okay, if you were to stop and say, "Yep, I'm sitting here playing. I don't want you to know who I am, so therefore this disguise, now leave me alone," that's not fleeing. I don't think you raise the specter of criminal activity going on. So back to your question, restate it for me if you would, so I can give you a clean answer.
I would if I could. I already deleted it because we've asked it.
No, I mean, the question was, is wearing a disguise illegal?
And in and of itself, the answer would be no. And for goodness sakes, with the caveats that I just gave, let's look at, I don't want to pick on women per se or out of the ordinary, but if oh shoot, I'm going to get in such trouble here. Looking at women when they're out for a night on the town versus like Bob when he woke up this morning and got on the video here with me, who's to say what's a disguise?
Yeah, and certainly it can't be illegal for to wear a wig, right?
Yeah, of the moment, is it a disguise for Jada Pinkett Smith to put on a wig?
Yeah,
I don't think so. That's almost it. But don't go running and don't try and create suspicion where you can talk yourself out of the situation would be my perspective. I also think the Mandarino case was wrongly decided, but it was because I don't believe the attorney on the gambler's side effectively represented the law. It doesn't seem that it addressed the question of whether or not a casino could arrest someone or seize someone on the basis of a perceived misdemeanor, and the law certainly says that they shouldn't, but they can seize someone if they have reasonable suspicion that the person has committed a felony. Maybe that would be a reason why Mandarino exists, but I just do know that case exists. It's not conducive to running so you don't get picked up if you are wearing a disguise, and that's about as far as the law has gone on that.
All right. We have lots more questions and very little time left. Hopefully you can come back in a few weeks, Bob.
Well, perhaps you can give them my GoFundMe page.
Oh, we can do that.
I'm kidding. I don't have a GoFundMe page.
So Bob's opening up a Patreon service. So if you'd like him to appear on this show, donate $10,000 a month apiece. How about you so far?
I was kidding.
So was I.
These opinions given by me on this show are, and this is a caution, without warranty. I am just hoping to help educate the public, but certainly, as I've said so many times, the law is a matter of interpretation. All of these are interpretations, and there's no warranty attaching to any of them as to their correctness. There, my disclaimer.
Yeah.
All right. Do you represent clients in California, Southern California particularly? If not, do you have a recommendation? This question pertains to criminal and civil gambling cases.
Southern California, no. I don't generally care for the law practice down there and don't have anybody I know practicing it. I've done some up in the San Jose area, And there's a lawyer up there that I've used who's very good and very smart. And his name's Mark Benninghausen. I don't know if he's still doing this stuff. But I've certainly been impressed with what he's done with me and how he's devoted to the clients. Again, that's San Jose, though.
Are there any United States jurisdiction where it's legal to use devices in order to gain an advantage?
I don't know of.
Yeah, you're asking Bob to do your homework. There's a lot of jurisdictions to go look up.
I wouldn't be surprised if certain non-gambling venues have missed that statute as they put their scheme together, the state's scheme for bringing in revenues on gaming. And if they did miss it, there is certainly an argument that it's not cheating. But at this point, at least with respect to classic devices, which really don't exist, by the way. I mean, I have on 4 different occasions have a gaming agent search a guy because they suspected he had a tapper. Okay, I don't think that there's been a tapper in a casino since 1978. And for those of you who don't know what a tapper is, that's off-table people signaling in on a device that essentially pinches the guy at the table, telling him what to do.
But really all that is a communication device. It doesn't give you any edge at a game, the device itself.
It gives you an edge to the game with the off counter.
Yeah. But the device itself
is it is essentially communicating to you the odds of certain plays, and you can't use a device to gain an edge in determining or utilizing those odds. So a tapper would be a violation. But they don't exist really, and yet you still get innocent people who happen to be great shuffle trackers finding themselves in God's country and searched because of this non-existent device, while actually all they are doing is being told what the advantage is by the dealer. I don't have
the casino would not know that it's non-existent unless they were searched.
Yeah, but just the fact that they're winning, which is usually the case, is certainly not an indication. It would certainly not be a reasonable indication that a device that exists about as often as pigs fly is being used.
All right. Next question. Well, it's somewhat related. In Nevada, is it illegal to record using video casino table game with a hidden camera while you're playing if it does not assist you in playing decisions, etc.? I've seen a few people post videos of themselves getting barred and was wondering if these recordings are taken legally.
I don't know that there's anything illegal about it, but the thing is, if you're on a table with a recording device, come on, let's be real. And somebody figures out that you're recording, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get arrested. You will be, once you're arrested, you have to defend yourself against the criminal matter, with all the expense that entails as well. So you're already behind the 8 ball. Now suppose you get convicted. You don't have any guarantee that you're not going to get convicted, and it is certain the fact that you are taping, I would suggest, is certainly circumstantial evidence that there is some cheating going on or some off counting or something like that. And circumstantial evidence is admissible in a criminal matter, and even though you weren't using it for the purposes of gaining an advantage, you may find yourself convicted of just that on the basis of the circumstantial evidence. Is that somewhere you want to be? And then adding insult to injury, assume you can prove it all and you spent 5 years in jail, but some miracle evidence shows up that said you never had any intent and could not have possibly been gaining an advantage with your device, doesn't mean that anybody is going to have to make it right by you, because qualified immunity will protect all the actors who caused your arrest. So what's the point?
To get
Or
more hits on their YouTube channel.
Yeah. What's the point is not the right question, or not the right end message. The right end message is, oh, for goodness sakes, don't do that. Does that make sense?
Pretty clear. Okay, on an earlier show, you mentioned the Gaming Control Board and the Gaming Control Commission are different, and a listener wants to know what's the difference.
The difference is that the Gaming Commission is the regulatory body, and the Gaming Control Board is the enforcement body. So essentially, your regulations are developed developed by the Gaming Control Commission, who makes the policy decisions behind all of that stuff, and the enforcement is the determining whether or not there's cheating, determining patron disputes, setting up whether the person meets the qualifications to receive a gaming license. That's all with the commission, or that's all with the board, and the commission sits there and they hear from lobbyists, and they're essentially the regulatory legislators for the gaming industry in Nevada.
Okay, our last question for today.
Really? I thought you said you had a lot more.
I do have a lot more, and we don't have a lot more time. We have, if we can talk you into coming back in a week or three, that we have more than enough to handle another one or two shows, and our listeners are very good at sending us in additional questions. My question is whether a member of the Nevada State Bar, playing mostly blackjack legally, if rousted for the usual AP hassles, would have himself special problems, not just in defending himself in court or gaming commission proceeding, but also with the state bar.
Okay. I knew this question was coming, and I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. Do you have any further explanation there, Bob? What is this guy worried about? If he's worried about the idea that professional gambling is somehow nefarious, grow a pair. And I do understand that there's some, when Barack Obama got elected to the Senate out of Chicago, his main opponent, they were neck and neck. And then he blew out the fact, as I understand it, that this guy was a professional card counter, amongst other things. And that impression killed him. It was front page stuff in the Trib and things like that. And that story, wow, I'm looking at Richard's face. I actually told him something he didn't hear.
I'd never heard this before. Yeah.
And that public disclosure of this guy making a living at gambling, he was unable to capitalize on it by saying, see, it proves I'm a smart guy. And in fact, the general public tended to look at it as, wow, this guy cuts corners and is not somebody we want representing ourselves in Washington. And the polls just flipped. Not flipped. They went from a somewhat tight race to an easy walk. But that kind of reputation for being a professional gambler, I don't think would run across to the state bar. And moreover, in that sense, there is case law 100 feet deep and a mile wide, not 2 inches deep, but 100 feet deep and a mile wide, that advantage gambling is a legitimate activity. And I don't think that the lawyer would have anything to worry about. I think he's probably worried about the idea that we're all supposed to be ethical and above board and good religious people and certainly never sin and all of that. But I don't think gambling as a rule, especially in 2022, implicates those concerns at any level.
But it might if you want to run for Senate in the state of Illinois.
Well, that's why I brought up the anecdote.
All right. Bob, it's fun. You're a great guest, and indeed we have lots more questions. Hopefully we can get you back in the very near future. And with or without Patreon sources.
Okay.
At the end of our show, we have recommended. So usually the host and sometimes the guest have something to recommend to our audience. Richard, do you have anything today for our audience?
You know what? I don't. I think last week I had 2 or 3, and so I depleted my store. So I don't have anything this week.
So we need to teach Richard the idea of rationing.
Yes, budgeting.
Saving for a rainy day. My recommended today will take some travel to reach, but if you're ever near that area, it's a satisfying side trip. The Kartchner Caverns are about an hour's drive south of Tucson, Arizona. There are 2 huge underground domes, wheelchair accessible, where they have tours that allow you to view the spectacular formation. If you can't make it immediately, no worry. The zillions of stalactites each grow about an inch every 100 years. So whenever you do get around to visiting it, it will look very much the same as it does today. Bob Nersesian, do you have a recommended for our listeners today?
Well, not really, but what I'll do is I'll tap into something I've been having an argument with a dear friend about. And specifically, we're both science fiction aficionados, and he was touting Bradbury, and I commented that that's like my least favorite science fiction writer.
Uh-huh.
And I cited to him Pat Frank and told him, if you don't know Pat Frank, he wrote Alas Babylon and a couple of other really good books. So my recommendation is go read some of him, except that my friend then tells me, you think Bradbury is topical and shallow and doesn't develop his characters enough? That's my opinion of your guy. So go read them both. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, see, now you spurred me to come up with my recommendation. So I'm not a big science fiction guy, but
he's going to recommend Asimov.
No, wrong. My recommendation for science fiction would be Harlan Ellison, and even his non-science fiction, great writer. So there you go.
There's so much to explore in that whole area. I second your vote on Harlan. That's a good one.
So thank you, Bob Nersesian. Hopefully we'll be talking to you again soon. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.